Strikeback, Season 3, Episode 9. Now, for anyone who doesn't watch my Legend of Korra reviews, Legend or doesn't even watch Legend of Korra, Legend of Korra comes on the same day as Strikeback. And for Legend of Korra today, they did some stuff, made me mad, messed with my head. And then I'm watching Strikeback, loving the episode, and I'm thinking, oh, great moment between Esther and Scott. Kumali's dead. Obviously it's really sad. Great action scene. Love the train scene. And for some reason, it actually had me wondering, is Scott gonna make it or not? With the train, even though it should have been obvious. But it was such an amazing scene. I was really caught up in the moment, trying to, just wondering, is he gonna make it or not? Whole episode, great action. As usual. Got some little stuff here and there that I thought was really interesting. Mostly, Richmond kind of grabbing Scott's hand at the end, and just everything. Loved the episode, and then we get the end of the episode. Scott and Stonebridge are going to the safe house, and initially I was really freaking out, like one of them might get shot. That's what I initially thought. And then so they go in the house, and then you hear like sort of a voiceover, or I think the voiceover is actually before that scene, and they show a random person like shaving and cutting his hair, shaving, and I just in my head as soon as I saw that I was like, it better not be him. And so they show the scene they're going through. I'm thinking, okay, they might get shot, something's gonna happen, people are gonna kidnap Esther or something like that, and then Scott and Stonebridge go in, they split up. Stonebridge gets captured, and they don't show who he's looking at, but you already know who it is. And Scott gets Esther, and then Stonebridge comes in with the other guy, and he says like he was never gonna kill her, and then in walks Kumali, and it's just I was just mad. I was just like, ugh, I was so angry because every episode this guy does something. It's like he has to be a bad guy. He has to be a bad guy. He saves Michael, as I mentioned before. It's like he slightly redeemed himself. I never thought he completely did because of the stuff that happened with Rachel, because he let her die. But everything he did, it was like, okay, there's always a useful reason. Maybe he said he's scared. It makes perfect sense that people, that Al-Zuhari and his men would think, okay, something's up with you, so they would try to kill him. He does something just to save his daughter, so that makes perfect sense. Anyone would pretty much do anything to save their children, so it just goes in order. And then they have the whole scene last week where it's all emotional, and he feels like he's not going to come out of it, and then we get the video and we think we see him get shot, and of course that ends up being fake. And he comes in this episode, and it's just like, what in the world is going on? Why, after all this time, what is it that was so important that he couldn't just turn on them from the very beginning? Like he could have easily taken his daughter. She knew the guy the whole time, even though he was going to take her away. So what is it that made it so important, outside of it just being great television, that he had to be, I guess not really a double agent, or I guess like a triple agent really, because he was good originally, or maybe he was bad way beforehand and then became good, acted like he was good, and then found his way back into basically getting on the case of Al-Zuhari and going deep cover, which wouldn't actually be deep cover because he's just flat out working for Al-Zuhari. But it was an amazing ending. It just made me like insanely mad going back and forth. And if you've seen my other reviews, how like every week it's like up and down with this guy, because he does something insane, but then he has a great reason, and it's like, okay, easily he could have died from that. And like when the car blew up, I think that was 2 episodes ago. He got out of the car, and I mentioned, it's like everything I caught, it just makes perfect sense now. Him getting out of the car, and I said, it seemed like he got out of the car, like he was so furious just at the drop of a hat. But I said, that is possible. That type of stuff does happen when you are accused constantly of something that is wrong. And one of the biggest things that you could be accused of is being a terrorist when you're not. So him being insanely furious, I thought, okay, in that moment, it makes perfect sense. He got out of the car as soon as like accused him. Locke went right after him, and then the car blows up and it kills the other guy. So it made sense, in the moment he filed, he explained it, and it was just like, okay, that makes sense. When he killed the guy, at the bank, he said that guy was gonna kill me as soon as I got in the car. It's like, all right, he said that. It's still that one didn't really, it's kind of like, how did he know that exactly? Then there was the other scene when he shot the scientist, I believe, or no, he shot the woman, McKenna, and he said, like she was gonna shoot Locke, and of course she had a gun and she was, but I think that was more just for him kind of eliminating a threat at that point, or not really a threat, but well, yeah, I guess a threat. If she was captured, she would give up specific intel, and she probably did know that he was working for Al Zuhari, which makes perfect sense because she was the one who killed Rachel. And when he went in, he was shot in the arm, which Locke mentioned in the previous episode. When he says, like I was shot, and then Locke was like, in the arm. And he's like, and he says, I could have died. And he's like, but you didn't, did you? And just all of that stuff, for anyone who kind of felt, because of last episode that he did redeem himself, they, throw all these scenes at you, all this great emotion, and it makes you feel for Kumali, and then you think he's dead, and then he comes back at the end of this episode, and it's just like, what the heck? All the, triple, quadruple crossing, captures Scott in Stonebridge, then he rescues them at the end after they've been tortured a little, and that was in like episode 2. Then it just goes back and forth, go somewhere, do something crazy. Perfect explanation for it that says, okay, that makes sense, if you think you're caught. And it's just all of these emotions. It's like I feel like I can't even review the episode just because of that, because all I think about now is every single scene with Kumali in it that just says like that it makes perfect sense now. That I was right on this and that, and he was just a bad guy the whole time. But I'll probably end up ranting about that again at the end of this. But the episode as a whole, I thought was amazing, and not just because of the ending. Like I said, I did love the whole episode. I thought the action was amazing, and each part was actually interesting to me because it felt like they had two really huge set pieces, because they had the first section where they lost everyone in this episode, by the way. Like everybody they were supposed to capture just died. So I guess that kind of makes sense, based on the fact that it led to that specific ending. Because even if they, if they caught the people, they'd have that intel and it would kind of spread things out. But that's just how it was written, of course. All the people died, and then it just led to, them bringing back Kumali and being captured. So however that plays out in next week's episode, which is unfortunately the season finale. And I feel like it's so short because it's only been 9 episodes. And I guess that could be because of the whole Strikeback Origins thing. And I guess, once again, I'll talk about that towards the end too. But the episode as a whole, when they first went to, like, the compound, it has a cool, like, Splinter Cell thing going, with night vision. And I was just like, when they first went down, like, the really long corridor, I was like, well, why are there just no lights in this building? Or, at least in this long corridor. And I just thought, I don't even care. It just looks really cool because they don't do night vision. I don't think they've ever done it, and if they have, I'm pretty sure it was only like for a little bit. I don't think it was even as long as it was in this episode, and I believe that might have only been in like season 1, and it could have been season 2, but it wasn't, as expansive as this one, even though that was, fairly short in this episode too. But I thought it was really cool, just night vision going on, and of course then they end up getting busted, so they have to shoot their way out. And one thing I thought was weird was how, like, like, I don't know guns or anything like that, but, like, if you notice, like, the lasers just kept, like, going on and off, it seemed, and that could have just been, easily them just moving, which I can see that happening in real life, too, where, you're just moving, you gotta aim at this, duck here, dodge bullets, and shoot back. So I could see that happening in real life. It was just something I kept noticing because it kept happening over and over again. And it even happened at one point, like, with the actual flashlight on the gun, too. But that's just, like, a random thing I just kept noticing. Like I said, I don't know, like, anything about guns. So if you do, comment and let me know if that's common or if it has something to do. I was thinking maybe with the grip, because I know, I don't know guns, but I know guns can be very technical, and there can be a ton of different equipment and weapons. So I could easily see, if you like loosen the grip, a certain amount, the light will go off, and so it kind of just goes back and forth between like a really hard grip and then a loosened grip as they're going through and stuff. So I can see that happening too. But if you do know, like definitely put that below because I'm kind of curious about it now that I'm thinking, is that actually a thing with guns where the laser might go off if you're not holding it or something like that? But that whole scene was really cool. I love the part where they blow the safe open and Stonebridge is like it's like a souffle. It takes time. Like he's trying to have finesse and do it perfectly, and then it just like blows off. And I love how they did it where it was shot right at the camera, and they just obviously had like a little guard in front of it, so it just like flies right at the camera, and basically all the papers just get like just scorched pretty much, or at least a lot of them do, and they're all burnt up and stuff. But that was really funny. And so they're going through, they have to guard each other, and I like how in this episode they kind of play on the fact that they're back in fighting form. Stonebridge, he doesn't have the neurotoxin in him anymore. He's pretty much back in shape. So when they get on the helicopter after the first big fight, it's kind of like, all right, they fist bump and stuff, like everything's back to normal. And I guess that's kind of why they have the two big set pieces, because Michael was kind of weak, so they hadn't really had those huge moments like they had in a long time. So I think that's kind of why they gave that to us. Also, it is leading right up to the season finale, so it makes sense that it would just ramp up with insane action, because next week it's going to be like pretty much even more action, so it just ramps right up. And in the second part on the train, I thought that was also really cool. They're fighting on top of the trains, hanging off the side, shooting each other. Scott gets tossed off the train and takes the guy's bike, or kind of commandeers it, I guess. And the line he said when he said like "nice bike," that reminded me of Terminator, because they say that in Terminator. At least I believe they do. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure they do, and I just love Terminator. And then they have the whole scene going back and forth, fighting people. Martinez gets shot in the leg. Fortunately she didn't die. That was like most important, that she doesn't end up dead. And it was kind of funny when the waiter guy like pulled a gun and he shot her, and she shoots him up, and then like all the army guys who were kind of like freaked out, like why are these three people coming on this train with assault rifles and stuff? Once that happened, they all get up and pull their guns out, because it's like once the random waiter guy pulls a gun on somebody, they're obviously a good guy. Like that just doesn't happen for no apparent reason. So I just thought that was kind of funny how it worked like that, where it was like the waiter shot her and she killed him, and they're just like, okay, are you all right? Because obviously something crazy is going on that we don't know about. And that something crazy is obviously the virus being spread, and we see that people have been infected in this episode. The whole cabin pretty much. And unfortunately, like Scott says it himself, he doesn't think they'll live because they don't have a cure. And they extracted it, or I guess are in the process of extracting it from the woman who worked at the facility, which was in the beginning of the episode. And she mentions herself, it'll take you months to get the cure from my blood. And they took a lot of blood, if you notice, unless that was from different people, which I'm pretty sure it wasn't, because this is something they don't really know about. So of course they take a ton of her blood so that they have sample after sample to work on it. And even from all of that, which obviously she went through because it's her blood, she still said it would take you months to get a cure from that, and people would be dead in days really. And they showed the little I guess virus map when after a certain amount of time, it was only 5 months I believe, and it was basically the entire world would be dead. So, and that's always the weird thing about like the super terrorists and TV shows and movies. It's like, this would destroy the planet, you'd be dead too. But obviously they'd have a cure, and they'd give it to enough people to rule over them. But aside from that, they start the spread of this virus. And something I thought was really weird was that the guy who spread the virus and the people he was with, I feel like they'd still be affected even though he was obviously spraying it in front of them. It's like spray, kind of, even though it's technically going forward, these like tiny little particles. It's so many. They're so small that it takes like millions for them just to look like spray. And I feel like him just breathing in while he's spraying it would pretty much infect him and everyone else, even if they walk behind him. I just felt like it just wouldn't work perfectly for him. But for the sake of the episode, it did. And it probably didn't. Who knows, really? But they all ended up dead anyway. So I guess that it would matter if they did end up infected, because obviously their bodies are put in body bags and all that. But I'm assuming for the sake of the series and just the episode, they weren't infected. And so they have the cool fight, and Scott fights the big guy, and I kind of liked how he fought him. And mostly like how it ended, where he was basically getting beat, so he just pulled his gun. And I don't know, I was actually leaning like you can see my whole body, but when he was like basically knocked down, he just pulled his gun and like shot the guy, and the guy kind of kept going, and that's obviously how Scott got thrown off. But he finished that guy off. Stonebridge takes out the other two guys, and he kind of shot the one guy up while he was on the ground. He just like to finish him off, and then he had to fight the guy. I can't think of his name. It was like Levotny or something like that. And so they have to have their duel while the train is shooting, and Scott has to take the truck. And I really loved how they did that, and that's how they built up the anticipation, which I thought was really well done. When he steals the fertilizer truck, and it seems fairly simple. All right, park the truck. The train's gonna hit it. It's gonna slow it down because it's convenient that it has all this explosive fertilizer on it. And he's about to get out, and then there's a dog in the back, which I also thought was kind of funny, just because of the scene in the like first big set piece when they kind of tell the dog to shut up. It was just, I don't know, I think it just randomly connected. It was like a random note to the dog in that first part, sort of foreshadowed the focus on the dog in the second part. And it could have been the same dog, technically, like the same dog actor, because you couldn't really see the dog in the first part. But I thought it was kind of cool how they did that. Scott's struggling with this dog, and then it flips to Stonebridge fighting the guy on the front of the train, and so the train's about to hit, and Stonebridge basically grabs the guy, and they jump off. Scott's able to, well, he doesn't really get the dog off him. I guess he's just able to like move him for a second, and he hops out, and then the dog runs off. And I love the line Scott said, he's a pussy dog. I thought that was funny. And then, of course, the guy ends up dead. So they still have no one. But, once again, that leads all up to the ending where, they go to see Esther, and they find out Kumali is not dead, and he, faked his death. He's been a bad guy the entire time. And for next week's episode, if you watch the preview, and if not, I guess this will spoil it, but not really, because obviously it was a preview, so who knows how things really will go. They obviously edit previews in specific ways to kind of get you real tense for the episode. But something they showed that really has me worried is that Richmond got on a plane, and at the end of this preview, that plane gets hit by a missile. And obviously the biggest problem with that would be she could die if that plane goes down and blows up or something like that. So that's the last thing I want, is for another one of our characters, main characters, to die, because we really only have three of them. It's Scott, Stonebridge, and Richmond, who have been in this series since the very beginning. We've lost everyone else throughout the series, and I feel mostly this season, because last season we lost one person, season one we lost one person, and in this one we lost two. So I'm really hoping we don't lose Richmond, because if we lose her, we only have Scott and Stonebridge, and of course I love all the new characters too, but obviously you want to keep all the old characters, because that's who you want to live, because when they die, they're dead. It's like real life, they're gone. So I'm really hoping they edited that just to mess with us. And even if they didn't and she's in there, obviously I hope she lives, because that would really suck to lose another character. And even if it was, Locke or Martinez, I'd hate to lose them too, really, because we have so few people. It's a tight-knit group, and you can't kill off 1 out of 5 people. That's losing a lot of people when you think about it. So I'm hoping it doesn't play out that way, but season finale is going to be episode 10. I'm definitely excited for it. I hate the fact that it is, the season finale because I thought they'd have way more story considering Kumali came back. I thought it would just, there'd be like a lot more with that. But unfortunately, it will be the season finale. But I'm super excited for it. I don't know how crazy it's gonna get, but they're chasing a plane. They're on the tarmac in a jeep, and cars flipping over them and stuff. So it's gonna be great, just like every other episode of the show is. And then after that, we're gonna get Strikeback Origins. So 6-part series for that, and I'm definitely excited for it. But like I said, it does suck that we won't get more work or more not work, but more episodes from Strike Back. But however it goes, it's gonna be great. And like something, a little thing that is once again involving Richmond. If she does die, it'll kind of kill off the little hint they gave us in this episode where she grabs Scott's hand and says, like you had me worried for a second, and then kind of just walks off smiling. So like the whole episode, and obviously he's always been the same way towards her because she's very attractive, and so it's just Scott's typical manner. So they always kind of play around. But in this season, like other seasons, she kind of just blew him off really, and in this season, it wasn't so much. Obviously with this one, it was a lot more direct than anything else she's done. But normally she's just like little smiles and stuff like that, or she'd like kind of make a joke whenever he made a joke, or something subtle. And this was kind of just I can't really say it's just full out, but I guess it's full out for what compared to what she's done, the entire series. So hopefully, they don't kill her off, not just because it would suck to lose her, but also because it would be kind of cool to see them see them get together, and hopefully that would be sort of a permanent thing, and that would kind of tie in with, you know, Scott dealing with the fact that he has a kid. And once again, because I kind of skipped over it, in the very beginning, but the scene with Scott and Esther was an amazing scene. That was like unbelievably well acted. They, both of them were crying, and it was believable. And that's obviously the most important thing in acting. And it was just really well done. And obviously for Scott, the character, that's just not what he does. And he's always had that connection to Esther, ever since they met, because they were so similar. And he just really liked her because they got along so well. And her losing her dad, or thinking she did, making her so upset, it made him upset too. He knows loss just like she does, but obviously not the same thing. And he mentions how he does have a kid, and he knows it's sort of a different type of loss really, and the loss of kind of never knowing. But they have a great scene, and I really enjoyed that. And Stonebridge kind of gives him his time to sort of recuperate for a little bit while he's getting briefed. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing for him to do, because obviously they do care about each other, even if they're kind of like they keep a stone face for themselves, and but they're so close, they do know. So they're like, all right, I'll give you space for this moment or whatever. And something else that was really minor is when Stonebridge is getting briefed, Scott, you can like hear him in the background kind of like fixing his guns and stuff like that. And for some reason that just caught my attention, and I actually really enjoyed it. Just, I don't know why, but just the random sound effects of him actually doing that were picked up, and I just enjoyed that. But comment below, let me know what you thought of this unbelievably crazy episode. I guess favorite parts, least favorite parts. Were you right? I mean, I guess I was right. I was messing with my emotions. Like, he's good, he's bad, and then comes back in this episode, Kumali is bad. So just what are your thoughts on that, and where do you think the season finale is gonna go? So comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.